Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Earthen's Den. And in today's episode, I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys about the concept of growing older. Now, I've been very curious in regards to this. And, when I think about my life and just how things are moving and shifting and things like that, I'm growing older. I'm growing older. I'm getting older. I'm not as young as I was. I realized that there are a lot of things within me that I'm just kind of like not feeling anymore, a lot of changes that are definitely happening within myself. But what I wanted to say, I didn't really do like a thorough study, but I asked some people who were older than me and some people who were younger than me. Well, not younger than me, but maybe same age as me. We talked about growing older and, is it a choice? So that was my biggest thing. So that's what we're going to call this podcast. It's growing up a choice. Now, I definitely think for myself, when I turned 23, I knew I wasn't 21, right? I knew I wasn't 21. When I turned 24, I was like, okay, I think I want some things to change, right? I think that I was like, I'm not going to say I know that I was like, okay, I'm not 21 again. Like, I'm not 21, I'm not young, but I'm not old either, right? Like 24 was such a interesting, I'm going to be 25 this year, but 24 was such an interesting age for me because I was like, okay, like, like you're still young, but then you're not, like you're getting older. First and foremost, I think when it comes to society, I think the world has a very interesting way of like making you feel like you're going to be young forever. And, there's something said about it. I remember I'm not hard on myself. Now I come from a space of a little bit more grace and compassion, but I've always been someone who has worked really hard to figure out what it is that I want for my life, right? Like that's what I've been doing my whole life since I can really process is like figuring out what are we going to do with our life? What are we going to do with our time? What are we going to be, And so you hear so many people say like, oh, you're still young. You're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out. I never felt that way, right? I never felt that way because I just didn't feel like I had that. I felt like time was passing me by and I felt like I needed to figure it out. I didn't really have time to say, oh, you're still young because that's not true, right? You're young, but it's like life is going on, so it's like you're gonna get older. And so I used to have a very negative like attitude about growing older. I think I used to just see so many adults who were just so unhappy, who were just so weighed down by numerous amount of responsibilities that they just couldn't manage or they couldn't uphold. And I was like, I am so scared of getting older. Like I was just like not here for it. And so it's like, I was really, really fearful of getting older. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to get old. Like, I don't know. I think that seeing so many unhappy women, not seeing any, role models, right? The previous generation, seeing what they had to sacrifice and suffer and go through and, nobody's dreams coming true and nobody being truly happy. Like that wasn't something that was around me. And I definitely think, this is also kind of like the detriment of your environment and the spaces in which you go. Like, it makes a difference, but not seeing that, it just made me not have anything to look forward to, right? And so I was really, really resistant. And this is something that I see in a lot of people. So what made me pose the question, is growing older a choice? It was because I was like, okay, there are some people who are older and they're like not mature, like they're old, but that doesn't mean that they're mature. Like they're actually very immature for their age, And then I was like, okay. And then you have some people and it's like, so it's like you have the younger crowd and it's like, okay, wait, so do you decide? Right. I remember last year, there was a situation and I was just telling myself, I was like, I'm kind of tired of doing the things that I've been doing. And I had, someone who was the same age as me. And they were just like, I'm just living life. Like, I'm just having fun, blah, blah, blah. And even though I was young, I just was like, I just don't feel like I can keep moving like this, I think it is absolutely a choice to go ahead and answer the question for the podcast. And, I had my friend also agree with me. It's a choice. Growing older is definitely a choice. You have to literally consciously decide to move different. And instead of looking at growing older as responsibilities and unhappiness and, being void of dreams or any spontaneity or anything that's exciting, look forward to freedom. Do you hear what I'm saying? Because there's something said about the youth, the naivete, the gullibleness, just I don't want to describe youth in such a bad way, but like when you're young, and you don't know what you don't know, and it's different, versus when you get older, it's like, oh, I have a choice. I can kind of decide what it is that I want to do, right? My grandmother would say the worst thing you can be in the world is a child. And I think, what she meant in that context was how, when you're young, you're kind of like dependent on other people, right? There's something said about growing up and being an adult and making your own decisions and creating the life that it is that you want. And it's not always in terms of like monetary aspects and things like that, but it's more so in terms of like, wow, like you can choose your friends now. You don't have to sit around the people that you grew up in high school with, or you don't have to sit around people in your neighborhood. Like you can do what it is that you love. You can stabilize yourself. You can spend your money how you want to spend your money. You can, you can save, you can invest, you can do so many different things. And I think that is kind of the piece that I look forward to, and so we're not going to push it here. Like I said, I'm 24. I'm still very young. But I'm definitely in a space where it's like, you live in the moment. And I think if you live in the moment, you won't really have any regrets. I know that sounds so cliche, but like when I say live in the moment, I mean like you're 24 or you're younger than me or however old you are. If you just stay there and just make the Oprah calls it the best right decision, like right now, like, okay, just keep making the right decision each step along the way. I definitely think you're going to look back and you're not going to have any regrets. I know for myself at the rate that I'm going, I'm not going to have any regrets in my 20s of like things I didn't do. I never really wanted to live like a crazy life. That's never been me. I've never had a desire to be like doing all this crazy stuff like that, and I'm not, and if you are, like, it's definitely no judgment, like, live your life. That'll be some memories that you can share, but that's never been me. I've never been that kind of girl. So it's just like, I don't have regrets in regards to that. And then I think for myself, it's like not really having like a real relationship and things like that. I used to feel like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to show up? But now it's just like, I'm just thankful. I'm just very thankful for my life and just how things are. And I think that if you can just get in a space where you decide to grow up, it'll be a good decision for you. Like, you have to decide to do little things like that make the huge impact. Like, it's a little lifestyle changes. Like, for me, this is a great example. I have to get my dog these little doggy bags. Now, I know people are probably like, girl, what? Like, doggy bags it's not even giving that. Like, why don't you have that anyway? First of all, I use a Kroger bag. And then second of all, usually we just go to the park and it's like whatever. But it's like sometimes if I'm walking him, he may leave like a little Dinkleberry. I know this is TMI. And I'm like, okay, I definitely, like, you know what I mean? So I think for myself, it's just, it's owning the responsibilities that you have now, managing those well, and working to really create the life that you love. And I think there's really something said about freedom. There's something said about living on your own, having your own place, being able to get up and go wherever you want, being able to, buy home supplies or learn how to DIY. Like, I don't know. I just think if you let go of like the youth aspects, like the partying, the drinking, the clubbing, all of these things, I think it will really open up the opportunities that life can really offer you, and to be honest, I realized for myself too, the world is going to treat you how you show up, So I think for myself, I had a recent experience where I realized that, in this regard, I was doing the old things that I had been doing prior, right? Like I was being kind of childish. I was being, and I was upset. I'm like, I'm a grown woman. Why are they treating me this way? And I had to be honest with myself. I'm like, oh, it's because I'm showing up this way. So, this is not a matter of perfection. I know a lot of people are definitely striving to be the best versions of themselves, and I'm always here for that. But I think one of the things I highly encourage is like, know that you are enough. Like right now, I'm not like looking for a relationship. I don't want to date. I'm not pressed about it. But like, I feel worthy of it. You know what I mean? Even though I'm here and I'm not necessarily where I want to be. And I know dating is such a like vague and vain, it's such a vain example. But like, I say that because I know that conversation is very prevalent, right? But it's just one of those things where it's like, I still feel worthy, like I still feel worthy. And I see so many people not taking opportunities, whether it's jobs, whether it's partners, whether it's friendships, whatever, you know what I mean, because they don't feel worthy. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely think, if you're not ready, things like that, those things matter. But I'm talking about the core essence of like worthiness. Like a lot of people, I'm noticing people are not feeling worthy on their journey to becoming better. And that's a problem, because what happens is you don't let all this time go by, and it's like you didn't really live. It's like, it's okay to live life. It's okay to have experiences, but definitely value yourself. Make sure you're showing up, because I definitely think it makes a difference. So I definitely learned that about myself this year. I'm like, if you want to be treated a certain type of way, you got to be treated a certain type of way. And we know the scripture. Hello. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, but now that I'm a woman, it's different. And I definitely encourage people to have that time for yourself, have that time, allow yourself to grow into that. Because I definitely think socials really rush a lot of people. I think from the anxiety, we're not really sure what's coming from the future. Like we just, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, but, they're letting out certain mandates, that was kind of chaotic and hectic. And you know what I mean? So I think a lot of times it breeds a lot of anxiety, but like, don't rush yourself, really don't rush yourself. I've learned a lot of grace from me. I've learned grace for myself, and honestly, just valuing me, you know what I mean? Like valuing my journey, valuing the things I learned along the way. Like the example that I just gave about looking back on that experience, hindsight, I was upset how I was treated, but I realized how I was showing up. Like, you're showing up childish, you're not taking this serious. You're not showing up as a responsible adult. So people are going to treat you that way, so it's like, you want to be mindful of these things. And I think, with everything it's growth, right? So sometimes when you're starting something new or you're changing, sometimes you have a tendency to resort back to your old ways. That's normal. That's okay. Like, it's okay. Literally, you're going through a whole 180 right now. Like, it's fine. As long as you persevere through that, you're like, all right, I noticed I slipped, but you know what? Next time I'm going to stick this thing through. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to show up in the next event or the next, whatever. I think that's how you will learn to stabilize yourself, so just be resilient in your journey of growth, and don't give up on yourself, and take your time. Definitely take your time. Allow yourself to heal. Allow yourself to grow. I know a lot of people, will definitely like to reference trauma as the starting point for a lot of things. And I'm definitely in agreement. Like, I'm not here to rebuttal. But one thing I will say is that maturity is just one of those things. Yes, it does come from experience. And yes, as a child, you shouldn't have had to take on those responsibilities, and you shouldn't have had to do those things, but it made you a better adult. And I think that's kind of how I feel about trauma now. Like, I think, when you're young, you're going through it, you're repeating a cycle. But I definitely think, me personally, I always kind of felt this way. You get to the other side of that. And I know a lot of people talk about healing is lifelong. I think that just sets you up for a lifelong cycle of victimization. Did you hear what I said? I think that this idea, like, life is, you're always going to be healing. That sets you up for a lifetime of victimization. Why? Because that little child in you, that childhood stuff, like, that's just the little kid in you that needs to be validated for the experiences that happen. That child seeing some things go down, things happen to that child, and nobody advocated for this child, right? This child was innocent. This child needed someone to be responsible and say, hold on, wait a minute, that wasn't right, but that never happened. So that's why we go to therapy, to be validated in that trauma. But what happens is, like, you take all that into your relationships and your day-to-day as an adult. It's just not, it's not productive. It's not productive, and it's not who you are. Do you see what I mean? Like, you've been through that, but that's not who you are as a person. So you have to work through that in your own way, your own time, but know that you do get to the other side. I don't really believe you're going to spend your lifetime healing. I personally don't. I think, right now we're probably going to be spending like the beginning of our 20s or 20s healing, figuring things out. But I think at a certain point, you should be a little bit more stable and solid within yourself. And I think that's just something I just personally think that that's a good thing to strive for. Like, don't get me wrong. We understand life happens. Okay. We understand life happens. We understand that life can be something else, but understand that you also are in control of a lot of things. Like, the moment you get control over yourself, you're going to realize things are going to stop just happening to you. I have to say, I think initially I was controlling, but I have to say I've always kind of been someone who's been self-governed and like self-control. Things happen, and I'm not going to say, like, we're not talking arrogance, right? We're not talking like sudden death and things that are out of my control. I'm talking about what I can control. Okay. So hear me clearly when I say that. Like, I'm talking about what I can control, but like, life really doesn't just happen to me. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't just happen to me. Like, I you know what I mean? Like, yes, life happens to everybody. Yes, it does. But it's like, it doesn't just happen to me, because I'm in control of certain things. I'm like, okay, do I want this to happen? Do I want this to go down? And I think, having that self-control, having that sense of self-awareness about yourself, you can make better decisions for yourself. You're not sitting around being in this victim mentality. And this is like the biggest thing that alarms me in today, because I just think that we kind of create that for a lot of people. We kind of set a lot of people up for this whole lifetime thing. And I think another thing too is like, I do feel to an extent it is a conversational boundary. I know that right now trauma and things like that are, it's very prevalent, but that, again, like I said, that's not who you are. So listen, I think that we could talk about that another day, but, I just wanted to say that growing up is definitely a choice, and it's a choice that you should make at some point in your life when you're good and ready to make that choice. But I can honestly say, I think, making that choice sooner than later is going to be to your benefit, depending on how you want to live your life and what things you hope to accomplish and what things you hope to have set in stone later on down the line for you. You know what I mean? So if you want certain things in your life, then decide on that today. Even though you're young, even though you're in your 20s, decide on how you want to live your life at 30, and make those sacrifices today. And, yes, growth is a choice. And the reason it's a choice, I'll explain that too, is because the thing about growth is like, if you don't stop doing what you're doing right now, because here's the thing, even though you're in your 20s and you're young, you are still an adult. Like, you're way past 18. Like, you're grown at this point. You don't have anybody governing you, So what happens is when you decide you want to live your life like this, nobody's going to tell you, okay, get up, time for school, time to get up and grow up. Got to stop doing that, right? That's not going to happen for you. And I know a lot of people kind of look up to social media, and a lot of people who started at 30 or whatever the case may be. That's fine. I'm just letting you know right now, it's about how you want to live your life. This is not in comparison to anybody else. This is you setting a standard for yourself and being rooted in who you are and what it is you want to do with your life and your time and how you want to spend it, So it's like, you just want to be mindful of that. So yeah, if you keep doing what you're doing, like, you're going to just keep doing that. Nobody's going to tell you to stop going out. Nobody's going to tell you to stop drinking. Nobody's going to tell you to stop, whatever it is that you may do that, is not what you want your future self to still be participating in. Do you know what I mean? So you kind of have to meet your future self halfway, like meet yourself halfway. But you guys, one thing I can honestly say, I'm really full of myself. I have a lot to offer. I have a lot to give. I'm such a full person, you know what I mean? And, I'm always here to share what it is that I know. And I'm always here to to shine some light on a lot of different things and kind of just encourage you guys. Like, adulting is definitely not boring. It's very lit. It's very, it's nice to create stability for yourself. It feels really good to just kind of be stable within yourself and doing what it is that you love. And you know what I mean? Like, that feels really good. So I understand it's a choice. There's really something said about freedom and adulting and being responsible. You find joy in the new things that don't seem so fun, like grocery shopping and cooking yourself a nice meal. And you know what I mean? Not even just above a bubble bath, but like watching your favorite show or listening to your music as you clean up. I love cleaning. So it's just like, you find joy in that. And then you spend time with your family. You may have nieces or nephews. I have a niece. I love spending time with her. I love seeing my family and going out and, having like family outings and, all the different things that I like to do now. So it's just like, give yourself that space because it feels really good. And you're actually going to have a lot more love and respect for yourself as well when you start living and moving like respectfully, you know what I mean, with your time and who you are as a person, and you respect yourself, So this is just the tool and the fruit. No, but this is definitely just this is the fruit of that. And I think for myself, I know that it was definitely a choice that I had to make. And I feel really good about the choice. I feel very confident about the choice. I personally don't really see it as a sacrifice. Why? Because, I know life is short. We say that all the time. We get it. But I personally plan to live a long life, God willing. So for me, it's kind of like, and I think another thing too is like, you got to look at your life and be real about your life, like, you may not have the opportunity to live a life one type of way. Like your dad's not Steve Harvey, So this is what happens with comparison too. You may look at another person's life, not talking about Lori Harvey per se. I'm just talking about circumstances, A lot of times we will look at another person's life and be like, oh, I want to be living life like this. Like, this is what it's supposed to look like at 25. Like, no. And everything I'm saying on here too, y'all, is like, this is my personal standard for myself, right? Like, if you can take something from it, then that's always good. Like, that's always my intention. Like, I talk about that a lot. Like, I feel like I was saying that in the first season, but I feel like I have an episode where I touch on that. And if it's not, I don't think I have an episode on it, but I know for a fact that I talk about it. I talk about it. Like, it's literally one of those things, you guys, where it's just like, hey, set your own standards, set your own standards. What defines you? Where is it that you want to go? What is it that you want to, do? Where do you see yourself? Like, set the standard for yourself and kind of let that be, what it's going to be versus you doing it the other way around. Don't let people define you, but set some standards for yourself, set some standards for yourself, set some standards for your life, because it's all up to you at the end of the day. And you want to look up and you want to be proud of yourself. You want to feel like it wasn't all in vain. You don't really want to have any regrets about how you spent your time and your years, so it's never too early to think about that. And I'm not saying you can't have fun, but I also recognize too, like, fun oftentimes is kind of seen as like partying, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with like music and good drinks or whatever. I mean, especially if we're all, of age here. But what I will say is that is typically what defines fun for a lot of people. So sometimes, you'll find yourself in those spaces, but that's not even fun to you, right? Like, you may be someone who finds like doing puzzles is fun. Like, I love puzzles. Like, I'm really into puzzles now. Like, I'm just into so many different things. It sounds boring, right? But like, I love that. Like, that's my thing. Like, I like all kinds of things, and it's like, I want to share, but I don't. So it's just like, I've learned for myself to define what fun is for me and not have it defined by society, because society will kind of put you in that space like, oh, this is what fun is. And honestly, I think it's something said about, friendships and people, to where it's like, can we really vibe, or do we always have to go out and do, these societal like preferred activities, for this age group? Like, do we really have fun? Like, but understand, everybody's not going to get this. Some of y'all are probably like, girl, you are so boring. And that's okay though. Like, I'm totally okay with that. Like, I feel really good about it. So I hope that this was insightful. And I hope that someone gleaned something from this. And I hope that, you start to create fun for yourself as you get older and as you decide to grow older. And I hope that you find some joy in just creating the life that you love. And, I hope that you find joy in working towards stabilizing yourself and being responsible and handling your business and, taking care of yourself. I hope you find joy in those things. You know what I mean? I really do, because I think that there is really like true freedom. True freedom is in adulthood, right? We're done with the childhood trauma. We got it. All right, cool, bet. Check that off the list. We talked about it. That little girl, that child in me has been validated. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like, we're moving on now. I get to make my own decisions. I get to consciously decide if I want to date this person. I get to consciously decide if I want to go there. I get to consciously decide if I want to spend that, right? It's no longer this autoplay expectation or this influence. At this point, you're an adult, so you get to decide. So, okay, you guys, I don't want to talk too much because I think this episode was long enough, but you got to decide to grow up, because if you don't, you're literally going to be doing the same thing that you've been doing forever. And maybe not forever. It's just, like I said, depends on your life. Some people, they want to live their life a certain way. And then at a certain age, they want to start X, Y, and Z. It's different for every single person. I never really felt like, even though I know that I did make some sacrifices in regard, like in my younger years, and even now, like I made some sacrifices, but I never really looked up and felt like it was a regret. I never really felt like it was a sacrifice that I wasn't willing and consciously, making. Like, it wasn't anything that I felt like I didn't want to do. Like, I genuinely wanted to do that. You know what I mean? So Again, it's all about what you value, though. It's about what you value and what, again, what you want for yourself, because I definitely know for myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to make these decisions. These are things I actually want to do and I don't mind doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm willing to sacrifice right now, so, and that feels good versus you being in a space where you no longer can decide. See, that's what happens when it's like immaturity and you didn't make a decision to grow. It's like life then forces you to grow up. You see what I mean? And then you're not ready for that because you see? So listen, a lot of stuff can be avoided. Like I said, I don't want to pave the blueprint for anybody's life. This is just me sharing my experiences. But I know a lot of times, if you're like me, you see adulting in such a negative complex, and that's because people didn't decide, So I want to just kind of shed some light on maturing. I want to shed some light on life and the possibilities of it. I want to kind of share some of God's hope, right? He tells us that he's going to give us, his plan is to prosper us, Jeremiah 29:11. Yes, I had to run it back. His plan is definitely to prosper us and to give us a future and a hope. We don't know how long, we don't know X, Y, and Z, but that's what God's word says, and he's not a man that should lie. So it's definitely one of those things where it's like, hey, let's make smart decisions so we can really be ready and prosperous and fulfilled in those latter days. Okay. All right, y'all, 25 minutes and we're up. I hope everybody has an amazing day and keep your head up. Make some good choices today.